This time around, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is the sequel to Yakuza Like a Dragon, the 2020 game that changed the dynamic of the Yakuza franchise going forward, to the point that not only was the Yakuza Western moniker pretty much abolished, but also the Like a Dragon name that was associated with both the franchise and the gameplay was adopted and changed at the same time. Because with Like a Dragon, unlike Like a Dragon Gaiden that came out this past November, Like a Dragon from 2020 was a turn-based RPG, the first of its kind in the franchise. And it became one of, if not the greatest, Like a Dragon games because of it. This gameplay change that was foreign to the franchise in the previous game, in the previous Like a Dragon, old school 3D brawler style that the former Yakuza Like a Dragon games had become known for the last 20 years. With Infinite Wealth, the gameplay is expanded with the implementation of a movement circle. Instead of the game just automatically moving characters before they do attacks, the player has the option, depending on what character they're playing as at that time, to move around a small circle and get close as possible or far away as possible to certain enemies. Now, enemies also are moving as the player is trying to move their character as well. And this strategy, when it comes to not only placement, but also the idea of where an enemy may or may not go, watching their patterns of movement, allows for the player to dictate exactly how they want to attack, and at times how they want to combo attacks. Because you have the ability to knock enemies into one another if you can line them up properly. You can actually attack down enemies by the person who has the next turn. You can, of course, perform spells and buffs and debuffs. But this change, this allowance to move before combat, before initiating an attack, adds a lot of variety to what could be a very simplistic gameplay style. Add that to the fact there have been new implementations to the gameplay that involves the abilities to pick up weapons. So if you are near, say, a traffic cone, and you hit the attack button, your character will automatically pick up that traffic cone and bash someone in the head with it. Now, while the core gameplay and, to a certain extent, the skill set of the characters are pretty much in line of what you saw in the previous game, but there is one drastic gameplay addition when it comes to a particular character, and that is Kazuma Kiryu. Kiryu actually has his 3 stances that can be switched before an attack. You can use the rush style that allows for him to actually do 2 attacks at one time. So if you're close enough to an enemy, you can hit him, knock him down, and then actually hit that enemy with Kiryu all in the same turn. The beast style allows for him to be able to pick up and grapple opponents, but it actually reduces his movement circle. So if an enemy isn't close enough to Kiryu when he's in beast style, he cannot pull off his most devastating throws. And then there's the brawler style, which allows for Kiryu to pull off his infamous heat maneuvers if you position him properly to attack an opponent. And like every RPG, there's a leveling system, there's gear to upgrade the stats of your characters, but the most important aspect when it comes to variety, when it comes to gameplay, is the ability to change jobs. And unfortunately, just like the previous Like a Dragon, job changing, the opening up of the job class system, is very slow. It's unfortunate because I thought they would learn from the previous game to avoid this by giving players a little bit more freedom earlier on. Another gameplay implementation that comes from the previous Like a Dragon is the fact that you can actually guard. And if you hit the block button right before an enemy hits you, you're able to pull off a perfect guard. Now, this also ties into one of the biggest issues from the previous game that flows into this one as well, and that is the camera. Depending on when the enemy attacks and who the enemy is attacking, if the player, say, used Kiryu, and he's on the other side of the arena, and the camera switches over to Ichiban Kasuga, the main protagonist of the franchise, supposedly going forward, even though Kiryu still hasn't stepped away from the spotlight. The game has a bad tendency of the enemy going faster than the camera. So by the time the camera catches up to the action, the player's character may have already been hit, making it almost impossible to pull off a perfect guard. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but it depends on the arena, the size, and the distance, where the player can be robbed of a perfect guard because of the camera's bad positioning alongside enemies, throwing out attacks a lot faster when their turn comes up than the camera can catch up to. There are also the return of summons in the form of pound mates as we take people to Pound Town, a weapons crafting and upgrading system that has been expanded upon compared to the previous Yakuza Like a Dragon, and other various RPG elements, including dining out to give your characters a temporary buff if you make the perfect menu order. Another RPG element from Yakuza Like a Dragon that returns here is the bond and personality system. Now, Ichiban's personality traits such as intelligence and bravery play a role as they increase, boosting his base stats like HP, magic power, strength, and even the effectiveness of some of his abilities and skills in battle, whereas bonds are his relationships with the other playable protagonists. These bond levels increase through everything from winning battles to simply having a drink at the bar to singing karaoke together or giving them gifts when you go to a local shop. Now, like increasing personality traits, increasing bonds is very effective in battle as well because it will unlock tag team maneuvers, which are these double team attacks that run on a meter and do devastating damage when used. Now, this is the biggest Yakuza Like a Dragon, whatever you want to call it, game in the franchise, where you not only go to Japan, but you also are in Honolulu, Hawaii, with sub-stories galore, a plethora of things to do that go beyond the main story, including, of course, the old school arcade games, karaoke, darts. And then there are new mini games like Crazy Delivery, which is like Crazy Taxi but in Like a Dragon. You have the Saijumon battles, which is a Pokemon parody, where you are able to take the enemies that you fought throughout Honolulu and Japan and actually train them to fight other enemies that have been captured by people who want to become the greatest Saijumon master in the world. There's also a dating app that kind of replaces the Hostess bar, but the biggest side activity definitely has to be the Happy Resort, which is what players will be utilizing to get the most money they can out of the game. How do you become infinitely wealthy? It's through this mini game, where you're able to run a hotel. There's also a side activity focusing solely on Kiryu, and I don't want to spoil why, because it's a big major plot point. But speaking of the plot, the interesting aspect about this game is the fact that, of course, it moves from what we've known is some of the major cities in Japan to Honolulu, Hawaii. Even though we do go back and forth to Japan, the fact is that a majority of the game, especially when it comes to Kasuga's story, is rooted in Hawaii. After his job is ruined by a social media account, Kasuga figures out a way to try to really rebuild his life. And one of the first things he does is try to find his birth mother. And this in turn takes him to Hawaii and allows for him to discover a lot about not only who he really is, but also the criminal aspect of Hawaii that doesn't get promoted much, while also emphasizing the financial struggle of certain Hawaiians. Now, from a technical aspect, the game is pretty much fine. I have no real issues with it. No game-breaking bugs. A few wonky physics when it comes to the gameplay at times. And as I mentioned with the camera issue, and there will also be times where the game kind of freaks out when he tries to do an attack if you're, say, blocked by a street lamp. But the biggest issue when it comes to Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth has nothing necessarily to do with the game itself, but the publisher. Sega has opted to place the New Game Plus mode, which is a standard in the Yakuza Like a Dragon games, including in Like a Dragon Gaiden that just came out this past November, behind a paywall. For those who want to not only have New Game Plus, but also some of the optional dungeons, which once again is something that we've grown to know is associated from a standard edition of the Like a Dragon games. You have to pay an extra $15 or $20, depending on what package you get. If you get the deluxe edition, it comes with it, but that's $85 USD. If you don't want it, or you wait till the game is on sale, to get all of that stuff, it's an extra $20 by itself. This is not a good look. This is something that I do not appreciate. It's something that I think is really a slap in the face to both new and old consumers. For people that have enjoyed the franchise for all these years, to have something that has become the standard associated with it now be placed behind a paywall that you have to pay extra money to actually enjoy aspects of the game that used to be the norm is ridiculous. And one of the main reasons why I must say, as much as I love this game overall, as much as I've enjoyed this experience thus far, I cannot sit back and say that this is a perfect purchase because of that one decision. It's something that needs to be addressed, it's something that needs to be handled, and it's something that needs to never really happen again. And it's something that shouldn't happen again with this franchise because of the standard that has already been set. I say wait. As great of a game as this is, I say wait until it's on sale. And if you can get the deluxe package for $60, $70, go for that. I have no problem with suggesting that and recommending that. If you want to pay the extra $20 to get the New Game Plus and the extra dungeons, only do it if it totals up with the standard edition between $60 and $70. I cannot, with good conscience, say that this was a smart move, that this was a consumer-friendly move. It's really a disrespectful move in terms of how you treat long-term fans and even newer fans who maybe just got into the franchise with, say, Yakuza 0 or with the previous Like a Dragon in 2020. There's no reason for this to happen other than greed, and I cannot suggest that. I cannot suggest that you pay $85 for a deluxe edition for something that should be already in the game. But when you do play the game, understand that it is nothing like the previous Yakuza games other than Like a Dragon from 2020. It is a RPG through and through with some incredible characters, a lot of stuff to do. It's incredible the amount of stuff they packed into this game. And the gameplay itself, especially if you enjoy turn-based RPGs, it is much better than the previous iteration. And if you enjoy those type of games, wholeheartedly get this game when you have the opportunity. But only when it's reasonable, only when it makes sense, and not because Sega wants to nickel and dime you with something that should be already in the game.